Welcome back. I hope you all had a really nice coffee break with plenty of opportunity to talk to each other and get to know new people. Before we head on, first I have to say a big apology to Marion, because apparently I had some kind of, I don't know, brain collapse earlier today, and I called you vice president. I mean, I know you're the president, so apologies for that. Now it's time for the panel discussion, stock taking on the implementation of the long-term vision of rural areas. And it is a great pleasure for me to welcome Miss Kristiina Tammets. There you are, Kristiina. Head of a large knowledge exchange platform, who will be moderating this discussion. Welcome, Kristiina.
Thank you, Ulrika.
But mind you, before I leave it all to you, once again, we have the Menti presentation, and we have a new code. Wow! The new code is 54921313. I repeat, 54921313. So now, use this opportunity to ask the panel all the questions you have. Okay. So it's your turn, Kristiina.
Thank you, dear participants and dear Swedish colleagues. Thank you so much for organizing this event. It's a great pleasure to be here and see you all face to face and celebrate together the birthday of leader. Happy birthday to all of you. And welcome back from coffee break. We continue our program with a very interesting session about the long-term vision of rural areas and CLLD, how CLLD can contribute to this. And now I'm happy to invite to the stage our panelists. And I start with the ladies. Kristina Yngwe, member of Swedish Parliament, please come to the stage and take a seat. Then our sweet president, Marion Eckardt. Toma Šutić, European Commission Cabinet of the Vice President Dubravka-Šuica. Mihail Dumitru, Deputy Director of DG Agri. Jozef Stahl, European Commission Directorate General for Regional and Urban Policy. Niklas Nienass, Member of European Parliament. Thibaut Guinard, President of Leader France. And finally, dear colleague, Radim, Member of European Committee of Regions. Without a doubt, the better future of rural areas depends on integrated development actions and good cooperation between different stakeholders and policymakers. And my first question is to Mr. Šutić. How do we make sure that long-term vision for rural areas is becoming something that is not only the responsibility of DG Agri, and that all DGs put enough effort into it? Please.
Thank you.
You can take a microphone.
It's a pleasure first to be here with you. Very happy to celebrate 30 years of leader together with you and to represent the Vice President charged with democracy and demography. Now, the fact that the Commission has somebody who is Vice President dealing with the long-term vision for rural area tells you that we really want it to be a horizontal effort from all DGs working together to bring benefit to our rural areas. So this will be done, as you've seen and heard through many statements already before, through the Rural Action Plan. In the Rural Action Plan, we are going to be doing real actions implemented by each of the different DGs. So we are very clearly tasking different sides of the Commission with concrete actions on the long-term vision. And we are also going to monitor how that plan is implemented and follow it up. Then there's also the observatory, the Rural Observatory, that will provide us with a lot of data. And that data is going to be used and analyzed across the House, across the various policies to ensure that the policies are adjusted. And then on top of that, there is the rural proofing mechanism. So it's a way of actually looking at all of the proposals that are coming out from the European Commission and ensuring that they take into account the benefit of rural areas. All of this has kind of been created with the idea to really make sure that the long-term vision becomes a reality and to include a range of different views on the rural areas going beyond agriculture and going beyond only cohesion policy, which have been kind of the traditional players in this field. And we are really excited to be able to do this. And again, there we still need your help. We need the help of all of the rural stakeholders to continue to put pressure on all of us together to ensure that we talk to all sorts of different entrepreneurs, providers of services, people who are really there and can create an ecosystem for the rural areas that would benefit everybody. I leave it there for the moment, but I'm happy to come back again.
Thank you. Your intervention left me feeling that that rural development is safeguarded in all DGs. Very good. Now I have many questions to Mr. Dumitru. I read them very carefully. How much effort has been put into your DG in order to turn long-term vision for rural areas into reality? Concretely in monetary and staff, do you believe it is sufficient in order to start a stable process of change? And also please tell us about the Rural Pact, which sounds really interesting. Who will be in there? How can civil society organizations like Eckardt can be involved? And finally also about rural proofing. Is the responsibility of DG Agri? Should it rather be a cross-cutting team in all DGs?
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to see each other physically after such a long period, and I think it's really very nice to be back and to see you all here. You asked me some difficult questions, so I think we are really prepared to face these challenges. I mean, you got a very good flavor today from all levels, starting with the Vice President, the commissioners, and then to technical staff of DG Agri on the challenging ahead with this long-term vision for the rural area. First of all, I think it's very important that we have the top political commitment, which has been demonstrated even through the President of the Commission mentioning the importance of our rural area. And then this communication, it is a political engagement which commit all of us, and not only in Brussels, but you know, we have to reach down the people and to reach down on the ground and to make things work. So you ask us if we are prepared in DG Agri and how we are going to organize everything and if we have enough resources and how much money and stuff we have. I mean, I can say from the beginning that, you know, and I think this is valuable everywhere in each administration, that probably you will never get all the stuff and all the resources you would like to have. but we are used to organize ourselves in a way to be effective. I think from the beginning we've been in this process, in a collaborative process inside the Commission. So it's true that my commissioner and the commissioner for the regional development, under the coordination of the vice president, they've been tasked in a mission letter to deal with this political priority. So therefore, the two line DGs, I would say, Agri and Regio, work on this initiative, but we had the contribution of 18 other services, DGs and services of the Commission. And we would like to continue to have all these inputs for all these services. Of course, we are in the lead, and we are organizing this process, and we have prepared ourselves to deal with this task. So you have seen we have an action plan, we have 9 flagship and 15 actions. We have very specific tasks with the rural proving, rural observatory, the toolkit, how to mobilize funding. So, and now I think in DG Agri we have started to prepare ourselves. It will not be a secret for you that we are reorganizing ourselves, and we will have a dedicated unit which is dealing with networks, let's put it different, with rural area and the networks. Because, you know, the networking and the networks are one of the main tools we have built up over the time. And the European Rural Network, you know, it's so well known. And the national networks, we are making changes to these networks because we have now to integrate the full CAP. And we will have the CAP network. So we have a new contract, support contract, and we put a lot of resources in this contract. So not only that we have a dedicated unit inside the DG to deal with this task, but then we reserve additional resources, funds, and support through a framework contract to address many of these things. So Alexia mentioned to you some of the points, like organizing, you know, these groups, specific groups, and you know that the network was always our main framework to deliver, and we will continue to use it. We mentioned about networks. I mean, we are talking about the twin green and digital transition in rural area. You know that we also developed over the years broadband competence offices, which is also following a network approach. We put everything together. And then I think we have technical assistance that we can mobilize whenever necessary to hire additional support and expertise whenever is necessary. You asked me about the Rural Pact, and I think Alexia mentioned to you a bit of the process.
Yes.
So it is not a paper that will be signed. So it may involve a signature of some papers, but it's a process, it's a framework where we want to strengthen the engagement and the bottom-up approach and the partnership. So we want to launch it. We have a strong political support. We want to, if you want to translate this political commitment at all levels, and we will launch this. Of course, we will have some important moment which will be marked by politicians. But then we want that this is then translated down, and we have a contribution of all levels of governance and, most importantly, the stakeholders. So we need that our stakeholders support this process. We reinforce the partnership. I mean, we are working with partnership, but we need a reinforcement of partnership. We need to address the weaknesses we faced in the past. And you know, sometimes we had this rivalry between urban and rural. We hope that for the future, we reach a situation where we define a place-based solution where we do not make this dichotomy between urban and rural. On the contrary, we work to put together the advantage and strengthening these links. You also asked me about the rural proofing. I mean, you know, there is a history behind this terminology. I was wondering myself, I am a Romanian national, so how I will translate rural proofing in my language, and I have to admit that it will not be very easy for me. But then we have to transform this technocratic word in something which is tangible. and it can be used for the benefit of our rural areas. So the concept as such has been put in a manifesto in the Cork 2 conference and Cork 2 declaration, and since then we have, at least in the Commission, we are trying to translate this in real life. So we work a lot with our colleague from DG Regio, and we try to develop this territorial impact assessment. And of course, this is one avenue where we are going to do the proofing. Then in the Commission, we are going to organize ourselves, and we are working on this to organize ourselves to prove towards the rural needs, the legal and non-legal initiatives. And we are now discussing how to set it up. But then we have to translate it down and have this rural proofing also in the implementation. We have to have this rural proofing of other instruments, other funding, and other policies. And we are working together. Of course, we are working with other central services of the Commission. I mean, Secretariat General of the Commission is very important. We have a lot of data and information in our Joint Research Center, and we hope that our Joint Research Center will very much input and will tap on their resources on data and then monitoring on the implementation. So, but to come now to the Eckardt and your role, I think we count on you to play a very important role. I think that's very, very important for us, but I think I can develop it further, because I think you are our network all over Europe, EU, and beyond EU boundaries. And you know the reality on the ground, and you can tell us a lot more. I mean, we are here in a leader approach, a leader method, which is a bottom-up. So we do not want the Commission to come top-down and tell you everything what you have to do. So we are very creative. I can tell you that I have colleagues which are very good in developing new approaches. But then we want you to come in and to tell us, this is going to work, this is not going to work, and to tell us openly, how do you see this process? I mean, we can put a framework, we can launch this discussion. You have seen that we foresee a number of events where we invite all our stakeholders and our level of governance to tap in and tell us. And then I think we develop these ideas further on the pact, on Rural Pact, on the flagships, on the other initiatives, and we count a lot on you to come. So I will stop here, but I'm ready to answer other questions and participate in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dumitru, and it's good to know that DG Agri is well equipped for a long-term rural vision, and also leader community is very much looking forward to collaborate to the Rural Pact. Thank you. Now similar questions goes to Mr. Stahl from DG Regio. How much effort has been put into your organization in order to turn long-term vision for rural areas into reality? Also, please open up a little bit what are the resources for that and stuff, and do you believe it's sufficient in order to achieve those processes and change? And what are the next steps also concretely that the DG Regio is planning to realize long-term vision for rural areas? The cohesion policy is often criticized not to being distributed enough in rural areas. Please open that side as well.
Thank you, and thank you for opportunity to be here. It's a lot of questions, so I take it one by one. Yes, the vision is a part of mandate of Commissioner Ferreira, so of course we are fully committed, and I will just complement what my colleagues said about the cooperation across the Commission, and we feel very confident that we will go forward. We allocated all the resources necessary. As Mihail said, we are efficient in reorganizations and reallocation of resources to new priorities. I'm not going to repeat all the tasks which are ahead of us. I can just tell that we are working, we have set aside the technical assistance to finance those tasks, to bring in experts from outside who can help us to do the observatory, analyze data, bringing the examples from practice. So we are working on this. So these are for next steps. I would maybe a bit touch upon this criticism about the about the cohesion policy and rural areas. I believe that cohesion policy is investing heavily in rural areas. It's a bit of misperception maybe. And when I looked at the data from period 2014-2020, it's 25% of money were invested directly in rural areas. Then we have another projects which obviously benefit people in rural areas. As an example, for example, all investments in digital technologies, e-services, what we do, everybody can benefit from it. We also know that, for example, investments in local infrastructures in small towns are investments which benefit not only people living in those towns, but also people living in surrounding areas. This is why we are really promoting the notion of functional urban areas. It means that looking beyond the municipalities' borders and trying to encourage municipalities and or in small towns and in the villages around to create joint development plans. We know that people are living in rural, traveling to cities for work, for health services, for schools. So we are looking at this not as a split between urban and rural, but more as seeing linkages and how to support it. So yes, it means that we are prepared to finance the rural areas further. We believe that we have the tools for it. We believe in the territorial instruments. The cohesion policy at the end is about the territorial instruments. We are very focused on financing the, I would say, integrated territorial plans, and which are prepared by with inclusion of local municipalities, local partners, stakeholders. And we, in the new policy, we have the tools, whether it's a new policy objective 5, which is called Europe Closer to Citizens, but which is basically about the financing small or smaller territorial development plans and to finance the wide range of activities. But these plans, there are conditions, they must be done in participatory way. The local communities or regional communities must be involved, and they must be also able to participate in implementation of these plans.
Mm-hmm. I forgot to ask one more question about regional development fund. How do you see the regional development fund concerning leader and CLLD?
I was indeed, and I was aware about such a question, so I looked a bit on the statistics from the previous period. We have a nice tool which is called Stratboard. It's prepared by our expert scientist on a Joint Research Center, which we refer to a couple of times today. And there we see the overview. I think that there is around 800 CLLDs financed also from cohesion policy. So we are financing them. We have the tools in the new cohesion policy to do it, and we are happy to promote it further.
Mm-hmm. And your reflection back to Marion's presentation when we saw that the Regional Development Fund is quite less used for CLLD. Do you foresee some kind of, tools or how to promote it further?
Yes, there were political signals, of course, from our commissioner who informed the national authorities about importance of supporting rural areas, and obviously CLLD is one of the tools. We are clear, of course there are other possibilities and territorial tools, but we are really putting importance on using the territorial development funds, which are participatory. I know that I'm repeating, but this is something what we are used to do it. And and we believe that we have tools to support it. So we are prepared. Now we are starting negotiating, or we started negotiations on new programs with the member states, all of them. So yes, we are going to also discuss how rural areas will be supported, and CLLDs are the territorial tools in general, and CLLDs, of course, we consider them as important tools to do it.
Yes, thank you. We hope very much that it will happen so that we are getting more means for CLLD also from Regional Development Fund. And also, meanwhile, I remind the audience that you have possibility to ask questions. Ulrika, have you already received some questions? Not yet, but very soon. Okay, you have already. Okay, please ask your questions from all the panelists. Now I have a question to Mr. Nienass. What is your reflection from European Parliament side on the long-term vision of rural areas? Does this document have the potential to create better balance between rural and urban areas? And what do you think is really good about it, and what would be your proposals to put more effort into it?
Well, the first proposal to put more effort in it, and I want to address the elephant there in the room, and then being done with it, is how about some funding? I mean, we have a great strategy that has, it has its ups and downs, I believe. But the major downside is that there's no additional funding for this strategy. So apart from what we have already distributed to the rural development funding, there is no additional funding. Of course, we can use, you're right, we can, for example, use the ERDF to support rural development in general, but that's more like a shifting, and that's something that would have happened anyway, because it already is true that we are using cohesion funds and the social funds and the regional development fund for, depending on the region, for rural development as well. Now there could be a little bit more of a focus, but there's no new funding, and I think that is a pity, and that is something that needs to change, and where the Commission really needs to reevaluate whether they can find additional sources of funding for it. In general, I think it's good that we first of all have a strategy and a long-term vision, and to go along with it, not just to have it as an appendix from the agricultural side, but really to have it something independent, relevant, also not just to think it alongside with cities, but really to take a focus on rural areas in general. And I think that happened quite well. And also in the preparation, I think, maybe you can also elaborate on that a little bit further, because you were directly involved. We are never involved as Parliament, but I heard that the citizen societies were involved quite heavily, and also not just farmers, which is also a very good trend. On the proposals, there's a lot of positive notes, I would say. It's not focusing on agriculture, which is also some new development, to be honest, especially if we look at the history of this CAP, where the agricultural lobby even asked for that every cent that is being spent in rural development only benefits the agriculture, which we thankfully stopped. But those used to be the trend of development when we were talking about rural development, and that has been stopped. So I'm happy about that. For the proposals, we have to go into the details much more. There's, for example, the idea to extend on Erasmus and the European Solidarity Corps in rural areas, which in general I would support, but it's a very thin line where you could also make it worse for rural areas, because if the problem with that is what we need in rural areas is the locations where people can come to. And so if you want to strengthen European Erasmus programs, we need to ensure that there are locations where people from cities can end up in rural areas. So we need schools in rural areas that can participate. We need cultural institutions where people can come to. We need educational areas in rural areas where people can come to, and therefore then learn and see, oh, this is rural areas that are very interesting, and that's an additional benefit. If we do it the other way around, we would just increase migration from rural areas into urban areas, and I think then it's a negative side. So we definitely have to look into the details, and for that, it is very important that we continue the instance from the start in which stakeholders were included, and continue that in the future. Because I don't want to have this discussion solemnly in Parliament and solemnly in the Commission and solemnly in the Council, meaning that everything that is being discussed will only be discussed in Brussels, a giant metropole with 3.5 million people, but we should have this discussion in the rural areas and especially with the people living in the rural areas and actually being engaged in that. And so for that, I'm happy to announce that with the Green Group, we have met together with Agri Committee and the Regional Development Committee and the Committee of the Regions, our colleagues from that, to decide on that we will continue to work on it, but also that we will have a big conference, bringing together all the stakeholders. So all of you, I'll keep you informed when it exactly will be, but to have that and have that discussion and go through every proposal from the strategy one by one and say, okay, what is the upside, what is the downside, what are we afraid of, what could happen, and what is missing? In general, it's money, by the way, and how can we improve it? And so this is something that I don't just want to see being done by single political groups and parties, but it has to be done by the Commission, which is a commission of all European people and therefore should act in their regard. So I'm calling for you to follow in this spirit and really involve the people in the strategy itself and not just, think it from top down, but really from bottom up. And I want to end on one note and just to go into the question that you asked earlier concerning the ERDF, so the European Regional Development Fund and the CLLD methods in there. So in the trilogue for the last ERDF or for the CPR in general, not just for the ERDF, but also for the Just Transition Fund if you're living in coal regions, for the cohesion funds if your country is eligible for cohesion funding, or for the European Social Fund. It is possible to do CLLD in it. It was possible previously before, but nobody did it. I mean, you can probably count the regions that did it on one hand. But what we did now to increase the number of CLLD projects is that we increase the co-financing rate by 10 percentage points. Meaning that if you're, for example, in Sweden, where you have a co-financing of 40%, you would then get a co-financing of 50%. That's a 25% increase of the co-financing rate. If you're in Eastern Europe, for example, in Romania, where we have a co-financing of 85%, you would get a 95% co-financing rate, which means it's almost for free for the member states and for the regions. And this has to be done on the national and regional level. So this is the moment where we, speaking as Europeans here, like the Commission and I, as parliamentarian, have to, I would have hoped for more, I have to be honest, but this is the moment where we have to step out and we really need to see an additional, I think that the Commission can help and inform our member states that this is possible and that they should include it. I hope that you will do that in the coordination with it, but it's really the responsibility from national side, from, for example, the parliamentarians from the member states, but also on the regions, and of course, if you can do it as well, to lobby for that it is being implemented in the region. It is helpful because you save money. I mean, money saving is always good for anybody, so there's a good argument behind it, and we know that it works. But of course, it's more difficult to build up the structures, to enable it, and there has to be the political will to have bottom-up approaches. But if they're going to do it, you can of course combine it with the leader projects that we have, because they are CLLD anyway, and so you could get additional funding for that and increase the funding for the rural development in general. So I think it's something where we definitely have to look deeper into and where we have to pressure the managing authorities, so also the parliaments that are responsible for them, into considering them in their programming for the upcoming period.
Thank you. There is enough money, I understand, but maybe the matter is in priorities and also on national level how to allocate this money and how to contribute to the long-term vision for rural areas. And now let's move to the national level, and Mr. Guinard from Leader France, President of Leader France. Next year is the French presidency of European Union. How will long-term vision for rural areas will be addressed in the French presidency program?
Yes, thank you, Kristiina. Thank you, Marion, for this opportunity to speak with you about the European Rural Agenda. As you know, in 2022, the French presidency of the European Union will take place, and we work since several months with the French government and all the partners of the French Rural Parliament about a project of European Rural Agenda. Because it's, I think, the good moment to speak about this rural agenda for European Union, because the French government have his own French rural agenda, and the Commission work about the long-term vision for the rural area. So it's I think the good moment to work about it. The French rural agenda is organized around 181 various measures: mobility, health, education, access to services, small business, digital. And if the majority of these measures already existed, with the rural agenda, they have been reinforced financially and are more focused on rurality with quantified objectives. And the French government heard our call for European rural agenda and supported now this project. It's supported by several ministries. And next January, we will organize two major events in France during this French presidency. We invite you to this event. It's last week of January, and in the first day of February. They will have events, especially on leader in the more beautiful town of France. It's the town where I am the mayor. And after a day to work about the European Rural Agenda in Strasbourg. So it's very important for us to work to ruralize all European policies and to have a real policy like the one of the urban agenda. So we need, for the success of this ambition, we need your help. You need the help of everybody, of every local action groups, of Eckardt, and because we need to have the same message in all the member states to have this European rural agenda.
Yes, thank you very much, Thibault, and we have great possibility indeed during French presidency to address all those important issues for leader community as well. We continue with national view. Ms. Yngwe, you were a part of the Committee on Rural Affairs in Sweden in 2017 in order to develop rural bill or rural agenda. What new opportunities do you believe arise from the long-term vision for rural areas?
Thank you very much for letting me be here, and welcome to Sweden. Yes, I was one of the members of a Swedish parliamentary committee that were working with the rural affairs to form a bill, and it was decided on in the parliament in 2018, and we have long-term vision to 2030 when it comes to rural areas. And I would say that the long-term vision of rural areas of the Commission is very much in line with what we have decided on national level. So I have to admit that there has not been much debate in Sweden about this long-term vision. And I think one of the reasons is that we already have a long-term vision on a national level, and we have action plans and a focus on implementation of at the national level. So I see that on EU level there is it's a way for us to strengthen the national implementation even more. And when there was discussions in the parliament a few weeks ago, there was a statement made by the parliament on the long-term vision of rural areas. I would say that the focus was that they of course welcomed the vision, but they also welcomed that there was a very strong focus on the local influence and the local level, and that we take into account that Europe looks very different and the rural areas in Europe look very different. And I especially welcome the rural proofing, that you have to, on every level, you have to look at how the decision affects different parts of Europe. Because during the last years, Swedes are very much in favor of EU and they very strongly support EU, but I do see that in rural areas the support for EU is going down a little bit, and it's very much connected to the discussion about forestry, and that people in the rural areas feel that on EU level they are taking decisions that affect the rural areas in a negative way. And I think that having a vision on EU level that is focused on bottom-up approach, that could be something that would be very positive for the rural areas in Sweden, and positive on how we can work with the rural development on EU level and on national level. So I do think that this long-term vision could be something that yes, further strengthen the work in Sweden.
Thank you very much. And now let's go back to EU level. Mr. Sršeň, Committee of Regions, what is your reflection on long-term vision of rural areas? What is really good in this, and how is Committee of Regions is going to support in making long-term vision for rural areas into reality?
So first of all, happy birthday to everyone, because it's amazing to be 30. Yesterday, after 2 glasses of wine, I felt being 30 as well. But unfortunately, I am not. In the morning, it was worse. First of all, I would like just to say that it's a great pleasure for me to be here. I was supposed to sit in Brussels for plenary in this moment, and I am much more happy that I am here in Halmstad, dealing with those issues like long-term vision for rural areas, which we are dealing with today also in Brussels, to do it in the field here in Halmstad. I fell in love with Leader in 2007. Actually, in that time, my girlfriend, current wife, was a first-luck manager of our local action group. And I was so passionate about the work, helping her, that I stole her the position for 3 months, first of all, and then forever. And started to go to Brussels, to Eckardt, etc., etc. And I think this is a unique instrument. You know, it's a really unique instrument, which is for me, Leader and Erasmus are the two most successful instruments which the European Union has. And it's a pity for me, but we will get during the next question how the member states take this opportunity, and that instead of going in front, we are going back. Regarding long-term vision for rural areas, I think we should all, because I think we all are proud people living in proud rural areas, that we should ask why we live in rural areas. Why Marion, she lives in a crazy forest here, like 40 minutes from here, and this amazing place. I ask myself why, when I was 27, I refused job in Brussels and I came back to my region, to my most beautiful village in the European Union, which is Dolní Studenky, where I am already for 11 years a mayor. And I started to work in local action group. Then being a mayor, for me it was natural, because my mom, she was a mayor before me, and my grandfather, he was a mayor in the past. My son is 4 years now, so I have long-term vision for being a mayor, hopefully. So we should ask ourselves why we live in the rural areas. In that time, all my friends said, okay, I'm also teaching at university, so everyone was asking, why you are going to rural areas? It's like, I felt like animal going to zoo, you know. Everyone was saying, okay, you will be oh, crazy, you are crazy, but I am here, I'm Halmstad, last week I was in Brussels, so it's not that you are closed in a cage, but it's a great opportunity. And the Committee of the Regions, it's the institution we feel ourselves to be very important, of course, because it's the body which represents the local and regional governments, so mostly mayors and governors of the regions. We are 312. The abbreviation is COR, so I saw it already during one of the presentations from DG Agri, that we are very important during this long-term vision for rural areas process. And we are mostly practitioners. We feel that the local dimension is kind of foundations of the house. Member states are the walls of the house, and the European level is the roof. And you need all the levels to cooperate together, in fact, to be successful in building a house which is surviving. My colleague José Manuel Bonillo, who is the president of Andalusia region, he's now a rapporteur on opinion which is dedicated to the long-term vision for rural areas. It will be approved in February, but I can tell you some basic points which are already sure that there will be in this opinion. So first of all, the long-term vision is an amazing document. It's nice to read it, you know, but it's necessary to make action to fulfill it, because there are so many strategies, there's so many nice documents on the European, national, regional level. But we are used as LAC managers and LAC chairmen that if we have a strategy, we do fulfill it. Yeah, and this is one of the crucial points. So even in the Rural Pact, I hope that we will be included, engage in the process as local governments, as local action groups and local people, because it's important. Because you cannot make a plan which is not tailor-made for the region, because each region is different in the European Union. It's the unity in diversity, so it should be done by bottom-up process, and all the measures which are done should be tailor-made. It is not about impression that rural areas are behind or something like that. It's about data, so we need to be data-based. We should do the rural proofing, territorial impact assessment. It should be part of European semester, that, you know, the rural development is taken as a measure, how the progress is done, because otherwise it's no use. Third thing is that rural development as a part of agricultural policy, it's the history, it's the past. Really, we should all feel that rural development is a part of regional development. There is important linkage between urban, rural areas, and we shouldn't just feel ourselves to be separated somewhere. And it's also about funding. Of course, agricultural policy will have less and less money. 5% from less money is less money, and finally there will be no money. Yeah? So I think this is important to combine the resources. Yeah? Actually, Czech Republic, but I will come to that later, is the example. For us, agricultural policy in the LACs is just a small benefit, but we are mostly funded through the regional fund, yeah, and social fund. So this is something which we need to use new resources. So it means also the recovery resilience instruments, yeah, Green Deal instruments, etc. So this is important. We should use all kinds of resources for the development. And I'm happy that for the cohesion in the Czech Republic, I think more than 50% went to the rural areas, not just 25. So I'm very proud about it, because cohesion is especially about rural areas, yeah, because we need to, Europe starts in the rural areas, and we need to be included in that. Another point, we need to, and this is my inspiration from South Korea, and is also in the opinion, we need to make basic standards of life in the rural areas. Although it costs a lot of money to make broadband to the last house in Sweden, we should invest it, because it's a human right to have internet connection. It's a human right to have kindergarten. Yeah? It's a human right to have transportation. Yeah? So this is something which should be taken into account. And this is the way in which South Korea went. And this is the only country in the world where in percentage, but also in the numbers, the people are coming back to the rural areas, and not just around the big cities, but everywhere around. So this is really needed. Yeah? Another thing is that for securing the standards, we should change our mindset. There wouldn't be a big bus going to a local area. You know, we should change. We have new technologies. You know, for me, some colleagues always say that cohesion and Green Deal are going against each other. No, it's not going against each other. This is a synergy we should use. We have technologies, so thanks to the technologies, we can secure standards of living in the rural areas. That's how I'm feeling that. It's also teleworking, for example. We should start from ourselves, from the public authorities, from local action groups. We should give space to the people to work from homes. Yeah, because I think this is something which we, during COVID, we saw that it's possible and it's working. So the change of mindset is important also. And we did not speak about the border regions, for example, which are also some kind of regions which are left behind, and we are very much try to dedicate our work to the border regions. And last but not least, I think everything is about the pride. I think if the kids from the small age were like grown up in the rural areas, and we say, okay, it's cool to live in the rural areas, you know, and it's a privilege, it's an honor to live in the rural areas. We cannot keep them in the rural areas for the studies. Go away, study, get experience. But if you are proud, and this is the Austrian case, yeah, they come back to the rural area because they are proud that they come from the rural area, and it's a privilege for them. One of my friends, she is working for the Czech Ministry of Regional Development, and she feels shame to say to her friends that she is living in Prague, because she feels to be a person from rural area, and Prague is something bad, you know, for those. So I think this pride, and we always having LR meeting, everyone is saying how it's bad, and you know, the neglected, we are felt behind, you know, and it's not zoo. I think rural areas are not a museum, but we should really be persuaded about it, and I think this is the point which gives the long-term vision to the rural areas. Those are the people, and we should start from the people.
Thank you very much. I love Radim's enthusiasm. And I do hope that you can include all those good thoughts into the opinion to be delivered to the European Commission, so that the European Commission can take all those good thoughts into account designing policies. Now I turn to our president, Marion Eckardt. What are your thoughts about long-term vision of rural areas, and what are the next steps Clld is planning to take? It should be on.
Yes, you hear me? Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, I really like the long-term vision. I'm really happy that something like this has been created, and the support that is there from the European Commission, starting with Ms. von der Leyen, talking about the rural areas at all. And I think that is a great thing. Like Radim said, it's a really nice document, and we have been very much involved from Clld in creating it. We have been asking the question all the time, but how do we go into activity? And we are still asking this question. And I guess who lives will find out, but I think it is really important to tie measures to it. It is important to tie dedicated funding to it. This is why we will for sure support the idea of the rural agenda from France, and we will for sure also support other possibilities to put this into activities. However, we also we have a rural agenda in Sweden as well, and there are many things that are not put into activity. For example, it says in that paper from 2017, I think it is, that we should have community-led local development all over the country, but we're not having it. We're having leader all over the country, which is also good, but not good enough. I think it's really important that leader goes into becoming a territorial development instrument, not staying in the agricultural corner where the funding is growing less and less, just as Radim said. Yeah, and our next steps is actually this conference. So to bring it a little bit into knowledge in our own community, what the long-term vision is for, and that it's for us, and it is for us to push for having more resources and having more activities from our national governments in that respect. And we will continue working with it. And I will stay there because my good colleagues from Thibaut and Radim, they said all the things that I wanted to say.
Thank you, Marion. Now we have time for questions from audience. Do you have some? Yes.
Okay, now you can hear me. We have a lot of questions, so be prepared. And my colleague Mia and I, we have tried to sort them out. So first we have a bunch of questions regarding the long-term vision. And the first one came before the coffee break, actually. If member states are not active promoting and implementing the long-term rural vision, is the Commission available to do it in partnership with LAGs or other networks?
Yes, the question goes most probably to Commission people. maybe Mr. Dumitru or Mr. Stahl.
Well, I think, first of all, we saw quite a lot of interest of this long-term vision in the member states. I mean, I am saying this, and I think my colleague next to me can confirm. First of all, we have so many events where the member of the Commission, services of the Commission participate in trying to explain what is about, how we are going to do it, what they should do, and I think that's a good signal. I will take it as a very positive one. Of course, we have other possibilities to work with the member states, but you know, we also have to give the member states and to recognize the capacity of assessing the situation and deciding on how to do it. I mean, we do not want ourselves to impose top-down, as I mentioned. We want to persuade them. We have to explain the advantages of entering into this logic. I mean, just to give you a very concrete examples. You know, we are now in the programming process. We are preparing the CAP strategic plans. Traditionally, the rural development programs were very good vehicles where the member states, they added a lot of national money in addition to the EU money, and we will continue to do this. And of course, we are working now on a logic of need-based and you know, this new delivery model where we let the member states a lot more flexibility and more you know, say on how to use this money. Of course, we put a number of elements which still keep our policy a common policy. But we have to judge the pertinence of the strategy proposed by the member states in these programming documents. But then there are many member states, they channel a lot of money in rural areas through national policies. And for us, this long-term vision, it is also a framework where we want member state, regions, all level of governance to think to our common challenges and common goals to ensure better coordination and synergies. We do not want to impose top-down on this. I mean, we think it is the most appropriate that each member state, they decide how they should combine this. But this is the whole logic, I think, of, for instance, this Rural Pact. We want that the actors and the different level of governance, they get into this philosophy. And that the actions they decide, they make sense. They converge towards the same objective. We have a lot of important and challenges ahead of us. I mean, I don't want to enter in the whole logic of green transition here. But I think when we look to this objective and we look to these challenges, and I think we did a very good and very solid assessment of the state of play of rural area with this exercise. I mean, if you look to this staff working document, there is a very thorough assessment from all angles: demography, economy, ecology, climate, digital, and they are all there. So, and this is why this is a long-term vision. We are looking ahead 20 years, and to say we pointed there and there and there, we have to do something there. And I think this is the way we would like to work. Of course, we have many possibilities to do this with the member states. I mean, we are in a kind of a structured dialogue from our policy point of view. I suppose Regio is in the same logic. So, you know, we are in a permanent contact dialogue. We also have, let's say, other elements which we can a little bit force the member states. So we make observation. We ask them to address certain things where we are not happy with what they propose. But you know, we also have to keep this balance of responsibilities because you know we can squeeze more, and that's not a problem. And I think we know how to do it. But then it's also a matter of effectiveness and in the implementation. I mean, if you squeeze above a certain level, then you may get negative results because they may not be they might not be feasible to implement. And then I think it's not serving the purpose. I mean, we rather find a way where everybody agree to move in that direction than forced to move in that direction.
Yes, thank you. The key is in cooperation and affecting in a positive way. Yes. And maybe we have some more questions. Or
questions.
Maybe
yes.
2 questions more.
One more question. Is it time for the European Commission to establish a new DG to focus and support only bottom-up development? Ooh.
Wow, other question. Yes, please.
I think I want to aid you 3 here because all of them are bound to say no to this. But I think the fact that we already saw that it's not the Agricultural Commission that is responsible, nor the Region Development Commission, or Commissioner, is responsible, but somebody completely different, Ms. Šutić, who's responsible for democracy, already shows a shift of perception. And I think that is a very good question to ask. Something that, by the way, we are discussing in Parliament as well, not on this concrete proposal to have like 1 DG, because we're not talking about, we'll see what the Commission does about it, but for us the discussion, for example, is do we want to have agriculture dealing with the business of rural development, whereas every other development and regional development is in the Regional Development Committee. Doesn't make any sense for us. Do we want to fight to take it back? And we already had the discussion with the Commissioner Ferreira, who also said it doesn't seem useful for her that everything that is considered development is in her portfolio, whereas the rural areas are excluded and then in this appendix with agriculture, where they sometimes fall under the radar. If we need a new focus, it could be. To be honest, I like the fact that it got a new nuance with Ms. Šutić getting in there, but I don't think that it is quite useful to have now 3 people involved with it, you know, too many cooks try to salten the, how do you say that in English? I don't know. spill the food, whatever. But I think the idea of having 1 DG maybe in the or under the DG Regio or something like that could be useful and could be something that we could look into, but that's really something that only the new commission, I mean, if there's any talks in the commission right now about that, it would be surprising me, but only a new commission could really evaluate, and we have to see whether this strategy that we're working on right now develops for that.
Yes, thank you. So you see that this could be beneficial. Maybe I can ask the same question also, the reflection from Commission side. Yes, Mr. Šutić.
Can I? It's working now, yeah. So I can take, or give you another perspective, and that is the one of the Vice President of the Commission. Vice Presidents in the Commission are actually tasked to coordinate the work of different departments, of different DGs. And this is exactly why we have a vice president coordinating this work, because it is work that needs to happen in the different DGs. And this is, we really want to step out of the traditional thinking. And I hope you are understanding the gravity or the intensity of this situation, which is reflected a little bit in what one could call hesitancy or a slow pickup along the line of the stakeholders, sometimes in the member states, sometimes even in the local side, and sometimes at the EU level. This is why we have the Vice President coordinating this work, because it needs to go across different policies, and perhaps putting it in only one would actually be limiting to the whole idea. Because we really want to step out. For example, we don't have representatives here today of our colleague, Commissioner Gabriel, who is charged with innovation. We have too many representatives of the Commission anyway, so there's no need. But the point that I want to make is that we also really want to bring innovation to our rural areas. And we are working closely as the Vice President together with our colleagues on innovation to bring innovation and ecosystems, innovative ecosystems in the rural areas to solve some of the problems. I think I want to go back a little bit to the discussion of what are the key elements that we have as problems in rural areas and how we can bring the different stakeholders together. How can we ensure that we have the services that we need to have in the rural areas? How can we ensure that we have the jobs? And those jobs, if we look for the next 30 years of Clld, it's not going to be most probably in agriculture only. Those jobs will be in services, those jobs will be in financial services. Some of the digital nomads will be living in the rural areas. This is what we wanted to achieve when we launched this in a way distant or not only related to the agriculture or cohesion policy. Mm-hmm. We wanted to ensure that we can have a creation of ecosystems that will be built together. And that's where I also wanted to invite you to actually reflect on how can you in your networks include people who you are not traditionally in contact with when you are talking about the welfare of the rural areas and of your societies. How can you have the startup communities work together with you? How can you have the people who are there to solve problems in perhaps creative ways? Radim was talking about, having empty buses, moving people from one place to another, but not moving anybody because they're not interested. But perhaps that can be solved by a small, smart app that would have people connect on demand. There are different ways in which we can engage. And it's a process and it's not easy. But what would be good, what we would look forward to, is to really get your inputs on concrete projects that you see can be brought across and can include these non-traditional stakeholders and people who will create a new reality for rural areas for the next 30 years.
Thank you so much. We need new ways of thinking and acting to make a change, of course, yes. Maybe just one last question and then we close that part of the session, yes.
Yes. The question is, if local territories are to be considered as partners and actors, will we see more programming and fund flows downwards, increasing leader funds, more inclusiveness in other programs for local actors?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, I think this is a little bit a long question. Can you once again maybe a little bit shorten?
If I shorten it,
yes.
Will we see more programming and fund flows downwards to local actors? If, and the pre-sentence is, if local territories are to be considered as partners and actors. But that is the question.
I hope that they are already partners and actors by definition. And for every EU policy, the stakeholder engagement is compulsory. So it's a pity that it's not working in some countries. But I think this is a necessity because otherwise we cannot build a house, as I spoke about it. So it should start in the local areas, but by engaging the stakeholders. And as I mentioned, every development strategy and every vision should be tailor-made for the region. So I cannot imagine that they are not included. But I know that they are, in some countries, included just formally and should be included more. And I think this should be the question for the Commission, to just really follow and press on the national governments to include the stakeholders, not just on paper, but really.
Yes.
Short comment.
Yeah, no, the inclusion of more actors is not something that would increase the funds. The increasement of funds would increase the funds. If the member states are willing to pay more for the European side, then we have more funding. But of course, it's true that we have to find ways, and we're trying to do that, or we're trying to pressure the Commission to find more decisive ways away, from the member states. Whether we ensure that there's more funding directly for the municipalities, for the cities, and for the stakeholders, something that currently is not possible to the extent that we were hoping for, and also something that that is not worked out as well as we would like to see, as you mentioned, but also, for example, in Germany, where we have a very strong federal structure, where really the municipalities are involved in a lot of decisions. Still there, it really is dependent. If you have a mayor who is active and who wants to do something and who wants to improve their town or village, or if you have somebody who's just there because he's always been there for 20 years and doesn't want to improve anything anymore. And then you see a difference of spending. And that's why I think it's not just the municipalities, but also direct involvement of stakeholders from the ground, like we do with LEADER. And that is also, I think, a very important thing we need to include, and where we need to shift politics from the European Commission side as well in the future.
Yes, thank you so much. And now I close this part of the session, but we're going to have another session ahead. But before that, I would like to invite the audience to small practice or attention practice. Please stand up. You have been sitting for a long time. Maybe it's time to stretch a little bit. And you as well, yes. And let's do this practice. When I say clap, then you clap your hand. Not now. Okay. But I didn't say clap. Okay, let's try again. But I still didn't say clap. Okay, let's try again. Okay, clap. Well done. Please sit down, and you as well. And we continue our interesting session now. We are moving to more to local level and to local action groups, and we're gonna look into how CLLD and local action groups can contribute to the long-term vision for rural areas. And I have my first question to Mr. Dumitru. What roles do you foresee for local action groups in order to make rural vision into reality?
Well, be reassured that we look at you as our main partner in this process, because you are such an extended network covering rural territories. So we are now talking to, I think, more than 3,300 CLLD lakhs. If I only look to the leader, I think we are talking about more than 2,800. So it's a very good coverage of our rural territory with, I would say, the most experienced people in local development we have, because I think you know all this business. And you grow up over 30 years. I was thinking about, I remember many years ago when we introduced the CLLD approach, I was in Poland. There was a similar conference. And I remember Michael Dowell, I suppose you all know him. And he said, well, there is a risk of extending the leader to CLLD because you may lose, the main feature of a leader. And I didn't share his skepticism at that time. And then today I see that yeah, it has created no risk. On the contrary, I think it has created more capacity and the possibility of raising more funds. You know, first of all, we invite you in the process of implementing the action plan for the long-term vision. I think we need stakeholders, and you are a very well-organized network, and we count on your active participation, as you did in the preparation, and we need also you in the implementation. You have noticed that in the communication we also mentioned the European Rural Parliament, and I know that you are behind also this setup, and we consider you a very one of the stronger partners we have in this process. Then you have a very important role for the implementation in the field. We are talking about the money, and I think sometimes it's not always about how much money we have. And please bear with me, but I faced recently the situation where we have to reprogram a lot of additional money for rural development for this transition period, where we had some question marks if we should apply the ring fencing for CLLD in EFRD, and if there is a real capacity to implement this money, additional money in a short period of time. So, I mean, yes, we need a lot more money for rural area, but it's also a matter of, do we have the capacity of spending them quickly and effectively? And then I also remember how much your role has increased over the time. I remember the time when the leader, the leader selection of the projects and all the management of the project, they've been done by the managing authority. And it was not easy sometimes to convince the member state authority to delegate this important task to you. And I think we are there now. And I think that showed that you were serious in this process. You demonstrated your role. You managed effectively this role. And I think we move into the right direction. Then in the process of programming, because as rightly has mentioned here, we have not added additional money or additional policies to this initiative, but we want to use better what we have. And here I think you also have a very important role to play in the partnership principle in the preparation of the operational program and the CAP strategic plans. We have very important challenges ahead of us. We want to pass these messages, and we want to capacitate all the actors in the field to embark in these challenges. I mean, if we talk about the Green Deal, we talk about the green transition, we talk about every member of society has to participate and to convince them to participate to this effort. I mean, we are talking about farm to fork and biodiversity strategy. We are talking about changing radically the way we produce and consume food and manage the resources. And you are an actor that we also count on you to pass these messages and to embark in this difficult and ambitious process. And it's the right moment now. It is the right moment because we are at the phase where member states will finalize their planning. And you are called to participate in this process and steer and influence. So I think it's a moment when you have to play an important role. And I keep repeating this to all our stakeholders, and especially to you, and be reassured that we count on you to participate actively in this process.
Thank you, Mr. Dumitru, for the trust, and we are looking forward to work with you. And now I turn to, I have also one plea to you that let's keep interventions 2 minutes, otherwise we run out of time. And I have a question to Mr. Šutić. How can the long-term vision support local action groups to get better connected to different development actors on all levels? And what is your advice to local action groups?
Thank you. So, yeah, I alluded to this already with the expansion of the way of thinking, right? The long-term vision is there. It's been designed to be rather comprehensive, to reach multiple areas, to tap into a number of different funds. But in order to be successful, the work will need to be done also at the local level through connections with those other stakeholders, other actors who can provide a higher quality of life in the rural areas. So as you reflect on making those connections, we will certainly be very supportive of that, of you reaching out to your municipalities, creating space for startups that will come up with solutions for your unique challenges. Because again, we know that you are talking about unique challenges in different areas. We don't want to put one-size-fits-all approach. So do reach out to the different actors in this space. There are also other networks at the European level that we have. Commission has recently launched a Startup Villages Forum, which can be another network where you can achieve also some synergies. So the invitation is rather to create these bonds beyond agriculture, beyond just the standard stakeholders, and bring joint solutions that can then also find, of course, funding from funds that you wouldn't think that would be applicable here.
Thank you. Now back to Radim and Committee of Regions. Why is it important to work with local action groups in order to make rural vision into reality? And are there any positions from Committee of Regions concerning this? Of course, we know there are. Please open up a little bit and please talk about also smart villages, CLLD and ITI.
Okay, so first of all, I want to say that leadership is mentioned in the new opinion. It's paragraph 39, which is saying that for the long-term vision, like the method is very important, and it's not just leader, but leader CLD, and it's combination to smart villages. So that's also in this opinion. Actually, I am the one who is kind of leader CLD agent in the Committee of the Region. Unfortunately, some of the colleagues already realized that. So I had my first opinion on leader CLD, and the recommendations in this opinion, which was actually approved by unanimity, which is quite exceptional within the Committee of the Regions, was that there should be 8% compulsory earmarking from all funds for leader CLD. Yeah, so it is, of course, a recommendation, but I think it's a very, very strong signal which is given to the member states. Actually, another thing is that I feel it like a human right for local action groups or for people living in rural areas to have possibility to implement all the funds. If some area and the people do not want to implement, they do not need to implement. But they should have right to implement all the funds. It means agriculture fund, fisheries fund, regional fund, and social fund. What I feel, because Czech Republic is a country, I'm sorry for not having the results from the Czech Republic in your survey. My colleague unfortunately did not send it, so I am very angry about it. But Czech Republic is now probably one of the countries mostly implementing CLD, and we are going to continue. We will have a little bit more money. And for me, for example, social fund, it's the most obvious fund for CLD is social fund, yeah? Because the combination with the small investments, with the hard soft project, it's really amazing and it works very well. I don't understand why in some countries they do not want to hear about using social fund. Although we have very good supporters in the Commission, for example, Marion, we are cooperating with her, but the member states say, okay, no, we won't use this, yeah, that's a pity. And also with regard to the principles, it is also mentioned in the opinion, we should really come back to the roots of leader, because the process is like the selection, bottom-up process. Simplification, it's like yet everyone is speaking about simplification and everything is more and more bureaucratic. We call it bureaucracy. I think in Eckardt it was invented 5 years ago in Tartu at the conference. So I think this is also important for the process. Smart villages, Sometimes I see that some of the colleagues are jealous about smart villages, that it's new, nice, sexy policy, leader is old already, 30 years. But I feel it like opportunity because we need to combine, because the role of Lux can be, should be, must be in the smart villages, because it's the partnership platform which should be there. So there is a space for that. It's also in this new opinion mentioned that there should be connection between leader and smart villages. We cannot compete between smart villages and leader. It's out of the box. Another thing which is important is that even in the opinion I mentioned that it's lost opportunity for this programming period, that such a small amount of regions and such a small amount of money is given to CLLD. And when I see now that Sweden, Portugal, but also Slovakia, which used 100 million euros from the regional fund, and they probably won't use it anymore, yeah? So for me, it's really a warning that we should do something, because it's impossible if even in countries where it was working, the member states say, okay, no, we won't go. It's not because of European Commission. Commission is really supporting it. Yeah? It's about the decision of member states. So you have to fight really on the national level, because I think there are results. There are results, for example, in the Czech Republic, we are already, almost all the strategies are approved for the new period. We are starting in June to have first call from the new period. And we are using 3 funds and 5 operational programs. It's easy to do it, the process. If you know how to do it, you know the lessons learned from the last period, so it's working. And all the managing authorities are very satisfied with implementation, because to touch the small project, which are binded to the region. So I don't understand why in those countries, and I hope we can, as LR, can do something for that, and as a committee of the regions, of course, because this is really crazy that finally there will be 2 real CLD countries, I think, and those being the pilot examples, not continuing. This is about the basic points which are mentioned in the opinion. There is also, of course, mentioned the importance of rural-urban linkages. For example, also connection between CLD and ITI. It was mentioned here. We have a coordination platform in the Czech Republic because, of course, even ITI is covering rural areas. Here, sometimes they are covering both instruments. So it's really necessary, even in receiving the goals, etc., to make the cooperation. And finally, we have colleagues from Moldova here. We have colleagues maybe online from Georgia. Leader and CLD, and there is also a colleague from Commission who worked for Turkey. You know, so I think it's very successful actually as a tool. Also in outside of the European Union, I could work for 3 years on the project in Georgia, and I think the results are amazing. Yeah, it's necessary also to think about leaders and CLD as a tool of development of the neighboring countries, which will one day hopefully come to the European Union. So this is another aspect which was not touched here.
Thank you, Radim, for reminding us about the fight for the CLLD and multi-funding, because it's all about integrated development, which is really, really important. And now I turn to Mr. Stahl. What is your opinion, how to make sure that CLLD can contribute to the long-term vision for rural areas in your organization?
I think that we already explained how we can do CLLD. We can prove from the past that we can do it. So I would now say a few words why we believe that it's good to do it, and how we are going to also argue with member states. And it's very simple, and it was said here that regions, including rural areas, are very diverse. So we could see, even when we talk about the population, yes, we have 70% of regions which face the population, but there are regions, also rural areas, where the population is stable or increasing. We have regions which are coastal, mountain, islands, close to big cities, remote. Each is facing different challenges, opportunities. What they have in common is a green and digital transition. This is something which in the next 5 to 10 years, all of us will need to face. Cohesion policy and other tools are there to help with it. We have new animal in the room, which is Recovery and Resilience Fund, which also offers financing for investment. We have joint transition funds, so there is a large amount of finances to help in this transition. And when we look at this, and if we say that we want to preserve this, I would say, diversity, and this is joint, this is what I hear everywhere, at the same time we want to bring in the people, we want to bring in the companies also to rural areas, we all learned how to telework and so on. So it seems that the best way is to have some kind of local development strategies or sub-regional and regional development strategies, which are in the best position to accommodate all these opportunities and challenges and to turn the development into positive. We had a good experience with smart specialization strategies and innovation, it was mentioned. We realized, and now we did it in 14-20 period, that we shouldn't finance, if someone wants to finance innovation from cohesion policy, they must have in place smart specialization strategy. And how the priorities for this strategy are set, the conditions are clear. It must be consulted and active involvement of entrepreneurs, universities, local, regional authorities, all stakeholders. And the second condition, that it must be continuous process. It's not that I will say now, I finance, I don't know, bio something in economy, and then for the next 5 to 10 years I'm okay and I'm pushing money to this. It must be continuous process. So this is why we believe that these territorial instruments are very good tool how to address very specific challenges and opportunities which are coming. So this will be our main argumentation for use also of CLLDs.
Thank you. And now to local level and from Eckardt, also from EU level. Yeah, Eckardt perspective and local action group perspective, Marion, why it is important to work more with different funds, not just only one fund?
I think we have been talking about it now for a long time here. We need to start to see the local action groups as an asset in all areas, a group that has knowledge about the specificities of that area, and we cannot cover all the needs from the rural fund. We need to be able to connect to actors that are active in the other funding, and it's about that actually very much rather than just having more money. We need to be holistically viewed at because we view ourselves as holistic development organization, and then we need that support from the government as well. In order to be working like that. And what was it else? Then I forgot. Wait, maybe Kristina has to say something.
So it's important to work with different funds. It's necessary. Yes.
Yes, and I can tell we are one of the local action groups in Europe, 1 out of 8, that worked with all 4 funds in this programming period. And now we got the message that we will only be working with the Rural Development Fund, and it's already affecting our work. Because we are not going to do with the urban-rural linkages. We will visit projects that we have been supporting social inclusion in this area, and not only the rural social inclusion, because we cannot work like in the whole territory then. So and also like we don't have the fisheries fund anymore, so that goes away because our local action group is very much aware of what are the priorities of the different funds and what possibilities do they then have to do their local development strategy. So yes, it affects a lot, and that's a shame.
Now I turn to Miss Kristiina Yngwe. Yes. In the rural bill, CLLD was explicitly mentioned. The goal was to implement CLLD in the whole country. Now it seems that the Swedish Ministry of Trade and Industry is not planning to reach that goal. There has not been any real political debate around this. What do local action groups in Sweden need to change in order to make this a political rather than administrative decision?
Yes, so the decision that you've been talking about with the 4 funds and only using one, that's you have to ask the government why it's been done, because like you said, there has been no political debate, and I think that the system is too complex, and the political system has been built well, in my committee we have the Rural Fund and we have the Fisheries Fund. In the Enterprise Committee they have the Regional Fund, and in 1/3 committee they have the Social Fund, and nobody has the overview, and nobody is, like you were talking about before, there is nobody actually having the holistic discussion about rural development. So I think that's the one problem. Nobody is actually talking about, and it makes it difficult for you to know who to talk to. Maybe that could be something that it's good when we now will use the Rural Fund, that you will have a clear partner to talk to when it comes to leader, and to the next program period there can be some changes. Yeah.
But is it possible still to bring it up and start dialogue and include CLLD?
Of course, but I think we are really in the end of the process now. So I think, but of course we will have discussions, well, yeah.
So fingers crossed that you're gonna have discussion, and maybe there is still the door open for CLLD. Yes, maybe in Sweden. Let's hope for that. And my final question of the CLLD round goes to Mr. Nienass. Why do you think it's important to use CLLD also in other funds than just the agricultural one?
Yeah, we heard a lot of examples. First of all, it's easier than to combine them. As you mentioned, the multi-fund idea has been used by just too few LAGs in order to really have a decisive impact. But also, and that's something that Radim mentioned earlier, I think there's so much interesting development possible if you think CLLD in the ESF, for example, in the social fund. What would it mean for social policies if people would be able to decide how to improve, how to change? How would it change our approach for social inclusion if those people that we want to include can also talk about and demand and ask and change ideas? And the same thing is true for the European Regional Development Fund, in which we could make it possible that actors from the economy, for example, could also say, you know, this is what we need as a level playing field in order to function properly. Just a very short example. Now, this is from a city, but they have a startup community there, and they just ask the startup community, what is it you need in order for you to thrive? And I think, and then they came up with, you know, a mentoring program, which no politician ever thought about, and so it was very easy to implement, and it really helped them. And that is something that we could benefit also in rural areas from, of course, if we include the actors who are working there, who are creating jobs, who are doing daily life, and just include them in the decision. And so I think it is really, and especially the experience from 30 years of LEADER really have showed that it is something that we can take up upon other funds as well, and therefore we should use it in the future. And I hope that this incentive that we made with the 10% increasement of co-financing really finds its ways into fulfilling that in other funds as well.
Yes, thank you. And local action groups are, of course, ready to extend to other funds, and we have collected the practice throughout 30 years, and that can be beneficial also for other funds using them. And now, thank you very much for this CLLD round. Do we have time for questions from audience? I know that we have left about 5 minutes in total, but we would like to have also closing round. But do you have time? Maybe 2 questions.
Yes,
max.
we have definitely 2 questions.
Okay.
The first one is, how will the leader method and its added value be ensured in policies and in the policy evaluation?
Policy evaluation. Maybe, yeah, can you once again repeat the question?
How will the leader method and its added value be ensured in policies and in the policy evaluation?
Yes.
It's
Please,
not,
Mr. Nienass.
It's not, because at least what I feel is that a lot of politicians don't even know that the leader method exists and that the CLD exists. And that's, I think, a pity that we face for the last 30 years, that this has not had the PR results that we were hoping for, that we still need. But I think that is something that the Commission could take up upon, that we make sure that in developing of the strategy for rural areas, that the reflection is not just done by research institutes, but also by bringing leader groups into the discussion and bringing the people and the stakeholders into the discussion. And I think that's something very important that we need to take into account when we're drafting this long-term vision.
Thank you. Any other reflection on that? Or not now, maybe then the next question.
Maybe it's a difficult one to answer, but still I think the audience think it's quite interesting. Why, in your opinion, are some member states quitting from multi-funding CLLD? Because this period we have had multi-funding, but not any longer.
Yes, what is the reason why they quit? Yes, maybe Kristina, you can. Yes, please.
Well, since the government is not here to respond, from what I have understood, the motivation is that they want to make a simplification of the funds, and these last few years, many of the projects has been used in the agricultural fund, and then they decided that it would be less administrative to use only one fund instead of using all the funds. That is what I have understood. I'm not sure if that's the correct answer.
Okay, any other comments? Yeah, Radim?
I would like just once again repeat that the argument that it's complicated is not valid, and if someone says that, send him to the Czech Republic, to the managing authorities to ask. We are the first country approved the strategies, although we have 3 funds and 5 operational programs, So it's not valid argument that it's complicated, If there is a system, it's working. So this is just an excuse, maybe, of politicians who do not want to give power to the people to select the projects and to use the money how they want, And this is the argument.
We have a new rural minister now, so I will send her directly to...
Yes, I'm also a politician, and so I can explain it to them.
So, Radim, your advice will be very welcome.
Yes,
Niklas.
This is the secret real reason. It's the giving up power from the national side towards the people themselves. And that's the main reason, because if you make it harder for them to access funding, if you involve less people, of course you have concentrated more power to single persons. And I know it from my constituency, for example, our ministers love to go in the campaign, go around and hand out big checks. It's not sustainable, it's not useful, it's not helping anybody on the long term, but they can, it's helping them for their campaign, because they can run around and hand out the big checks for like single projects. And I think that's the real reason, to concentrate the power. And other than that, all the reasoning can only be,
Yes, we need to motivate member states and governments, and I see that Radim is, and Czech Republic is a good example how to make it done. Yes, Marion, please.
I think we are maybe being a little bit harsh, because I think also we have a responsibility as a local action group to show our use to the government and maybe communicate a little bit better, because I have a feeling that every time we talk to them, we're only talking about the complicated administration instead of saying what we can do and what kind of a tool the local action group is, and the competences that we have and the innovation that we're doing and the vastness of our project scope. So I think that really needs to be done. And then there is always power struggle, not only between the government and other people, but between actors in general. And yeah.
Yes, we are now approaching to close this session. I invite all panelists to summarize 2-3 keywords from this really, really interesting panel. After listening also others, what do you think are the priority actions and partners to be involved to arrive to the vision designed for rural areas to make it true? Maybe we can start from Radim, and then, yes, each of you can
I'll repeat what I have said.
Reflect.
Rural areas are not a museum. Rural areas are the future. Europe starts in the rural areas.
I think all the interventions this morning show we need a strong network like Eckardt, and I want to thank Marion for the dynamic carried by her. It's very important for LAGs to be organized in this network, and I hope we are going to work together and to work for leader on CLLD.
Yes, I think that the time for CLLD is coming and will continue to come. But we still have to fight for it, but we still have probably the best situation that we ever had. But it's still not over, and we need to continue to go for it from all sides, by the way, be it on the stage with the Commission. I'm completely hoping for your help in convincing the Member States to include CLLD in their programs, as well as everybody from national parliaments to the whole regions, and of course everybody working as stakeholders and doing their best. Just try to lobby your governments and your politicians that they include it in the programs. And if we set that in stone, we would see so much change in the next 7 years. I think that would be incredible.
And my viewpoint, I just want to reassure you, I've heard it, that the really partnership principle is very strong and present in the cohesion policy now. We want to be clear that it's not only now in this stage during negotiations of programs, but we are going to follow it all over through implementation. We want to support the stakeholders so that they can participate not only now when we consult the programs or national authorities consult the program, but also during implementation, the possibilities to participate in monitoring, evaluations, and so on. So that's. And the message is we continue working. We've heard what actions are there for long-term vision for rural areas. We are there. We start working on all the actions. We have people in place. We have money to finance this. So we go on.
Thank you.
We are here at the anniversary moment. So I think 30 years. And the leader method, I think, has passed the test of the history. It proved to be a very effective method and very effective policy tool, and this is because of you. Because you've been behind and you are working hard to implement it, and I want to congratulate you for everything that you achieved for implementing this initial idea that started as a community initiative and become such a widespread method in EU and beyond the EU. And you know that the Commission was very proud of this method. We even promoted outside the EU. And just to mention that in the Task Force for Rural Africa, we have used and tried to promote this method also as a local development method for this continent. And now we are looking ahead, 20 years. So I hope that we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. And I wish you good luck. And probably I will not be here to celebrate the next 20 years, but I am pretty sure and I'm confident that you will do an excellent job to translate this vision in reality. Thank you very much. And good luck and happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mihail, for those words. I think they really nicely lead to what I wanted to say, and that is that the future of Europe is in your hands. I have to say that because Vice President is charged also with the Conference on the Future of Europe. But here you are shaping the future of Europe. And we are trying to help by providing this one way of doing that, and that is through the long-term vision of rural areas. But continue building the future as you have done so wonderfully in the past, and let us know, let us actually do it all together. Thank you.
Thank you. Marion, yes.
Thank you for all the nice words. We will continue to stay in contact with you. And also I wanted to, that reminded me that I forgot to tell you before that we are actually in an event in the framework of the Conference of the Future of Europe, and we will get to some conclusions in the end of the conference deriving from this panel and on the next, where we will send messages into the Commission of our wishes and what we see. And I think a lot of good points have come up here already today. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you very much for a very interesting discussion, and I'm looking forward to inviting you to the Swedish Parliament to continue the discussions, because the work that you all are doing is very important, and the future of Europe is not built in Brussels, it's built everywhere in Europe, and I'm looking forward to having the further discussions.
Thank you. This was our session. Thank you to panelists. Thank you to audience. I now give over to Ulrika.
And thank you to Kristiina as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I will make just a quick thank you, because we are heading for lunch. This is yes, you get one also. This is something really locally produced from the region of Halland. Please, welcome. Thank you, and I need the paper bag as well. Thank you. Because this one is for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. There you go. You're welcome. Okay, thank you once again to the panel. Give them a big applause.
Woo! Thank you. We can go, yes.